I'd like to make a few announcements. First is regarding masks, Executive Order 12A mandates universal face coverings for individuals inside public or private school buildings, regardless of vaccination status. In accordance with this executive order, all meeting attendees are required to wear a face covering while in the New Canaan High School. Disposable masks will be available upon entrance in the Wagner Room, and vaccinated individuals wishing to address the board may lower their masks when speaking at the podium. Unvaccinated individuals should remain masked at all times. In addition, I'd like to read an excerpt from Board of Education Policy 1630 regarding civility and relations between public and school personnel and conduct on school property. The Board of Education expects mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among all individuals on school property. This policy promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among board members, district employees, parents, and the public. It is not intended to deprive any individual of his or her right to freedom of expression, but only to maintain, to the extent possible and reasonable, a safe, harassment-free environment for students and employees. In the interest of presenting board members and district employees as positive role models to students as well as the community, the board encourages positive communication and discourages volatile, hostile, or aggressive actions. The board seeks public cooperation with this endeavor. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to call to order the August 23rd meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education. First is to approve the minutes from the August 23rd meeting. Is there a motion? Penny, second. Carl, I think, oh yeah, Carl, you were there. Great. All in favor? Abstentions? Bob, Jen, and Sherry abstain. Thank you. Next is to review and approve the agenda for this evening. May I have a motion? Sherry, second. Pat, all in favor? Thank you. All right, comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Okay, with that, is there anyone wishing to address the board? Okay, please raise your hand and you can come up. Yep. I would ask that when you come to the podium, please state your name and your address. Thank you.
Okay. I'm allowed to take this down for speaking?
Yes.
Okay. Alex Sullivan, St. George Lane. I'm extremely uncomfortable that I've had to share my name and where I live. I believe in the right to choice and freedom of speech, but today neither of those are acceptable unless you choose and believe a certain narrative. I am fearful of speaking today because loud members in this town have denigrated anyone with feelings or opinions other than their own. But if I don't stand up for my children, who will? It disheartens me that people who are asking for a choice of agency over their bodies and how they choose to live their lives are being vilified. I ask that we all take a step back and recognize that everyone is entitled to their feelings. And we can agree or disagree, but no one has the right to tell someone their feelings are wrong. Anyway, I digress. I actually am not up here to argue for or against masks. I have been silenced in that regard. But I take issue with this idea of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Dr. Letzi, your efforts last year were nothing short of amazingly entrepreneurial in guiding this public school through unprecedented times. And an entrepreneur would never believe if it ain't broke, don't fix it. By that statement, the Industrial Revolution was unnecessary. I hope you and this board will continue with that entrepreneurial spirit moving forward. If masks are here to stay, then how do we now address the concerns of parents who have real issues with them for their children? Last year, the cast of Oklahoma did an entire 2.5-hour performance singing and dancing in clear masks. It broke my heart to see them this way, but my God, what an unbelievable and amazing experience we were able to have as a result. And so I ask, if mandates are now the way of the world and freedom of choice is gone, can we please mandate these masks for teachers in our public schools? Surely, if masks are for the good of the community's physical health, then clear masks on teachers are for the good of our children's education and mental health. Let's get imaginative. Let's find ways to make things better for our kids and many concerned parents. And if your answer to this is great, but we have to give teachers a choice, then I think the school district and this board's priorities need to be reconsidered. I've emailed you all twice about this now, and I would really appreciate a reply back. Is my voice being heard? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. We'll move right into reports and recognition. First on the agenda tonight is an ESSER grant overview with Dr. Correnti.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give you a quick update of what we submitted to the state. We are waiting for our approval, but I thought I would give you another update. The last update I had sent to all of you came through the Friday update on July 2nd, and I do believe that you have a copy in front of you. So first of all, as you recall from our meeting last week, Dr. Lutzy shared with us that we received $1,062,030 from the ESSER ARP grant. So that is the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, and it's the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And I think, as Dr. Lutzy pointed out last week, we're very gracious to get $1 million, but we need to remember that there are some school districts that are getting $150 million. So when we look at that $1 million and how we can best spend that money to meet these priority standards, we really took into consideration a lot of feedback from a variety of stakeholders as we were preparing and getting ready to submit our grant. The grant is very specific in how we spend the money, and there are 5 priority areas. And you'll see that priority number 1 is learning acceleration, academic renewal, and student enrichment. Priority number 2 is family and community connections. Priority number 3 is social, emotional, and mental health of students and of our school staff. Priority 4 is the strategic use of technology, staff development, and the digital divide. And priority 4 is building safe and healthy schools. So when we looked at all of these 5 areas of priority and we gathered feedback, not only from administrators, but also from staff and even from some parents, we were able to come up with 2 areas. You don't have to spend the money in all 5 areas. You can spend the money however you'd like. Some school systems that don't have air conditioning are putting a lot of money into priority number 5 to get better ventilations in their school, to get air conditioning in their school. We're so fortunate because we have those kinds of facilities, and we're so fortunate to have the air exchange that we do have within our buildings. So really, when we looked at the priorities and looked at all the feedback that we gathered in the spring, the 2 priorities that we were most concerned about were priority number 1, which is the learning acceleration, the academic renewal, and the student enrichment, and priority number 3, which was the social, emotional, and mental health of the students and our school staff. So when we submitted the grant on August 16th, still awaiting the approval from the state, we had outlined several areas that we were going to spend the money in, and we added a few additional areas. So I'd like to just quickly review those with you, and then certainly Bill Tesber and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. So priority number 1, we had a huge success with the Achievement Academy this summer for our students in grades K through 8. And I think we tried to provide a few updates throughout the summer so that you got a perspective. But this program was really designed to help students accelerate learning. So we had really looked at a lot of our spring data throughout the course of the year, and we reached out to a wide variety of families of students who perhaps had a lot of absenteeism, or were very disengaged, or were possibly even a remote student that didn't attend our school, or a student that may have not been doing well academically, or students who just needed a summer enrichment. And certainly we began to do a survey of parents to find out if this would be of interest to them. We got a huge response back that they were very excited to have a structured program that would continue for 4 weeks into July. And so we were very proud. We had about 75 students attend the program. They came Monday through Thursday, and they were provided academic support. So they received support in reading, writing, math, or any area that they needed in. We also had EL tutors there available as well to help our English language learners. And then we provided a ton of enrichment activities. So they were doing STEM activities or just games outside or art activities. And it was a huge success that we probably will run that academic achievement program again. The grant is good for 2 years, so that when we talk about some of the staffing that we are going to be looking to hire and some of the programs that we're doing, we've allotted for 2 years of that program. The next item is the credit recovery program for New Canaan High School. So this year we had approximately 5 students who needed financial support to attend our recovery program. We had many students who participated in the credit recovery program, but we were able to provide financial support to any student who needed it. Building substitutes, as you may recall, we did have the building substitutes in the ESSER 2 grant. And in the ESSER 2 grant, we had only planned to have the building substitutes until January. And then we were going to not have the building substitutes. We had a long conversation with the administrators, and certainly the building substitutes were incredibly valuable to our schools last year. The building substitutes are certified teachers, and we pay them as a certified teacher, and that is what makes it so appealing. So we're able to get high-quality staff who are certified in the state of Connecticut to come into our buildings and serve as a building substitute. That was incredibly helpful as we moved into COVID last year, and we had teachers who had to be absent for an extended period of time. The building substitute was assigned into that classroom. If the building substitute wasn't assigned for the day, they were used to assist small groups of students with their academics in the classroom. So they were of great value. What we discovered, though, was the hiring would be a challenge. If we only offered them a job till January, most of those people would not take the job. So we decided to extend this from January to June, and we picked up the other half of the building substitute cost in the ESSER ARP grant. The next priority was a special education teacher for the high school. So we really wanted to reduce down the case numbers that we had at the high school of number of students that each of the special education teachers were servicing. We've had an increase of some of the special education needs at the high school, and so we really felt that this would be valuable. Additionally, we have increased 2 coaches for SACs. And it looks strange because it's a 0.4 math coach and a 0.4 ELA coach. So what we did was we reached out to 2 of our people that are part-time and asked if they would go full-time. And so we're very excited to bring on one of our coaches at SACS, who is a current literacy specialist, who will go full-time. And then we are bringing on one of our math coaches at the elementary level that's part-time, who will now go full-time. Both of these people will actually be working over at SACS, which is our largest population of students. And their responsibility is really to work closely with classroom teachers to help them with the differentiation of instruction in the area of math and English language arts. And our goal is to really set up some model classrooms so that you can use that for professional learning. So if you have another teacher that really needs to have a better understanding of what a mini lesson is or what a guided group is, they would be able to go over, watch that lesson being delivered, meet with the coach, have a conversation, and help to increase the differentiation within their own classroom. It's great RTI practice, response to intervention, and really helps to increase and accelerate the learning for kids. Those were the areas within the priority 1. In priority 3, we look to hire a K through 12 outreach social worker. This position has actually been filled. We were able to find somebody who would come here for 2 years and work with us. All the people that we're hiring that are under the grant understand that it's a 2-year commitment. And so that does make a challenge if you're looking to bring in an external person. We're able to move some people internally, but when you're bringing in an external person, that sometimes becomes a challenge. But we're really excited to have the outreach social worker join us. This person will really be working with families of students who have been disengaged, who have chronic absenteeism, who are really struggling to get to school, who might have some social emotional issues. Maybe there's socioeconomic disadvantages within the family as well, or circumstances that they've gone through. We really have had conversations that this person may not be working from 8 to 4. They might be working 10 to 6 or 11 to 7 because they need to meet with families at 6 o'clock at night to work with them and to talk with them. So this is an emerging position that we're very excited about. We also wanted to expand the Kids in Crisis Counselor. So as you know, we have a Kids in Crisis Counselor who is at the high school, and that program with the work of the Kids in Crisis Counselor has been very successful. So the Kids in Crisis Counselor comes from Kids in Crisis. They're highly trained, working with children who might have high anxiety, depression, suicidal ideations. That's part of their background, that's part of their training. And what we would like to do is expand this program over at SACS for 2 years. So we have seen an increase in the number of risk assessments that we're doing at SACS, which is very concerning to us. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate staff there to hopefully be more proactive with our students. We've also looked to hire a school psychologist that would be split between SACS and the high school. That may be a bit of a challenge to find. So we're still going to keep the position posted, and we're going to hope for the best. But once again, this is to really help with the increase in the social emotional demands that our students are experiencing from COVID. And then the final position that we'd like to add is a dean of students over at SACS, and they would mainly be working with the lower division with 5th and 6th grade, and really targeting mainly to help with the administrators with the discipline. So as you know, Mr. Gussage, who's our building principal, also oversees a grade level, which is very different structure than at the high school. So Mr. Egan doesn't oversee a grade level. One of the administrators kind of serves as an administrator for 1 year. They'll serve as 2. So it's very difficult to get that structure in place at SACS, just the way SACS is designed. But so the dean of students would be very helpful in that lower division to really help with some of the issues that arise with students from a discipline perspective, and try to be proactive in working with the kids at that level. So Bill and I are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Crunchy. Any questions, comments? Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question on SACS. Are we seeing it seems like maybe we're seeing some of the same issues that we've seen at the high school in terms of, kids not showing up to school or having, kind of serious social or emotional issues. So are we thinking about doing anything, more kind of systematic at SACS to deal with that? Or is this more, sort of COVID-oriented short-term, and then we, see how things progress?
Well, I think whenever you're hiring positions under a grant, it's kind of a trial to see, does it help to improve? Does it help to reduce numbers? Does it change the data that we have in front of us? And that's nice that we have 2 years to take a look at that data and see if it does make improvements. If we are seeing dramatic improvements, then we would have to make a decision whether that's something that has to go into our budget as a Board of Education 2 years from now. So we are doing a lot of proactive things over at SACS to try to help the social emotional well-being of our students, continuing obviously with our emphasis in emotional intelligence and our work in regards to ruler, but also really trying to reach out to students who were remote last year, to kids who have been disengaged, really trying to do a lot of those meetings before school even starts to be as proactive as possible. And it's ongoing meetings with counselors and ongoing meetings with social workers to try to, stop issues from becoming bigger issues.
Right.
And I'll just add to that briefly. I did have a conversation with Bethany and Dr. Pierce over at Health and Human Services about the Kids in Crisis Counselor over at SACS. And we agreed that if the model works well, that they would look to pick up the cost of that going forward after the 2 years with the grant. So Bethany would build that into the town side of her budget, and fund that like they do right now for the high school position. And in terms of things like the Dean of Students, that we're seeing that in a way as a pilot, so the grant enables us to do that for this couple of years, see how that runs, and if it does, we could look for some further restructuring there on sort of the student level work that we're doing and needs to be done.
I think, Brent, prior to COVID, we would see a student or two occasionally who was disengaged and not coming to school. Certainly with COVID, we've seen a significant increase in those students. So, after we get on the other side of COVID, I would anticipate we'll see the numbers drop back down, but, time will tell.
Right. Thank you.
Sherry, go ahead.
So first of all, just overall, I think this is a great use of resources, and I wanted to say that I did get some phenomenal feedback on the Summer Achievement Academy, and Again, at a time when a lot of other summer programs were canceled because of COVID, New Canaan Public Schools stepped up and led forward with the in-person summer enrichment. So kudos to you and the team on that. I'm fully in support of all the mental health support. Just in my own professional life, working with youth, well aware of kind of record anxiety, stress, depression, suicidal ideation. I would love to see us explore if whether the social worker or one of these resources could actually think about leading some after-school peer support groups. I think there's unfortunately, there remains a social stigma around mental health and asking for help and seeing a counselor one-on-one. But I think if we could create some fun after-school environments where in a peer group setting, students could talk through their feelings of isolation or missing out or whatever it is they're struggling with. There's all these theories now. The one I heard just recently is called the cave theory, where people have been inside so long that it's hard now for them to take that step back out. So I just want to say I support all of the, the mental health and the focus on the whole child and the emotional well-being. I think needs to be front and center this year.
Carl, go ahead.
Jill, could you give us some idea of kind of the types of profiles for the various roles, the types of people, what their backgrounds are, their resumes are like, and in particular the Dean of Students, I'm curious about.
Certainly. So with the Dean of Students, we would be looking for someone that possibly has their O92, which is their administration certificate in the state of Connecticut. We're also looking for someone who has experience with teaching middle school children, and so that they have a clear understanding of the developmental stages that middle school children go through. And we see a lot of transition that happens between 5th and 6th grade in particular. And sometimes we forget about that transition because our kids have lived a year in the middle school as 5th graders, where most middle schools start at 6th grade. And so most middle schools see that transition right as kids are entering in. So we do a really nice job trying to work with executive functioning and keeping kids organized and getting to understand who their teachers are and their teams and what does that mean as a 6th grader. It's the first time they experience grades. So the Dean of Students would be someone that would be meeting with grade level meetings, talking with students, kind of walking them through the different guidelines and what it means to be a 6th grader over at Saks and what it means to start to have a little bit more freedom at Saks. That's a big difference. 5th grade, they're still really homeroom based. They're kind of all kept in one part of the building. The 5th grade teachers for a good part of the year walk the kids to their specials, make sure they know where they're going, and then they slowly release them to doing that all independent. And then they kind of start 6th grade and it's like, woohoo, where do I go? And I can take a different path to get to that art room, and I can take a different path to get over to that music classroom. And that's part of being a 6th grader and exploring that very large building. So to have somebody that can really be proactive and work with kids, we would really be looking for someone that has experience with middle school, understands the developmental stages that middle school kids go through, and hopefully has an O92 so that they really have some leadership opportunities and leadership experiences. They won't be supervising and evaluating teachers, but to have that leadership coursework that they've had to take is very valuable.
Okay, thank you. I had a question as well. So if you're able to fill all these positions successfully before the start of the school year, where does that leave us in terms of the balance of the grant? And there are other things you're thinking about doing or additional supports you'd look to add if funds are remaining?
So normally what happens with the grant is you have to put in transfer to the state. So if for some reason we can't fill the school psychologist position and we go for a period of time this year without filling that psychologist position, then we can make a choice this year to appeal to the state, put in a transfer, and move the funds to something else. Or because it's a 2-year grant, we could even hold and decide how we want to spend the money next year.
Okay.
So that's not a rush because it's a 2-year grant. Some grants are 1 year and you have to spend all the money by June 30th or you lose it. This will allow us to carry money over. So if we don't fill that school psychologist position and nothing urgent comes forward, then we can make a decision in the spring how we might want to spend that for next year or even in January. And we could just put a transfer into the state to move the money.
Great, thank you. Great. Oh, Sherry, go
So
ahead.
I had one more question, a question. So I've heard from some of the parents that the mask wearing presents a challenge for our early readers and some of the speech pathology, speech therapy students. Have we looked at like requesting maybe an additional resource so that we could be providing additional therapy or one-to-one support for any of those learners that are challenged, specifically by the mask wearing?
I'm going to refer to Bill. I'm not sure if that's something that you would like to answer, Bill.
Sure. I mean, we haven't had requests from staff to say that, we have students who are feeling that they're not progressing as they should be, with the instruction that they're receiving with masks. We do have, for staff who want them, we do have clear masks that are available. Some of the world language teachers use clear masks. Some of the SLPs, the speech pathologists, started using the clear masks. But they didn't feel that, I haven't had any reports that kids are having difficulty progressing in the curriculum with the mask use. A lot of those instructional services are done in a small group, close together. They're across the table, so it's not, it's not like it's a large group instruction with a speech pathologist or something like that.
And last year, some of our early educators did wear shields at times, so they
Yeah.
would keep a distance from the kids and they would wear the shield, because you're right, watching the way the mouth forms and how you pronounce vowel sounds and consonant sounds, the schwa and all those wonderful things, is important to see. So there were times that they would switch over to the shield so that the kids could see the full mouth exposure and see how that's all formed as well.
Or the clear mask.
Or the
Yeah,
clear
one or
mask,
the other.
one or the other. So, yeah. I did want to just add one more thing. We did put a small amount of money in Priority 5, which with the testing. So we had a lot of success last year when we offered testing to our students ages 13 and up. And it was also a helpful strategy that we utilized to help keep our schools open. So we did put a small amount of money there to try to help support if we wanted to do that again after, a Thanksgiving or something big event like that.
Hello, is the temperature okay?
I think so.
I got a phone call, so I just want to make sure everyone's
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, thank you.
Temperature's okay.
Yeah.
Service. Exactly. All right. Exactly. Penny, go ahead.
I think all of this is terrific work. I appreciate what the effort you put into it. I was wondering, is there any more that we need or could be doing as a district regarding outdoor education? It just seems like the Delta variant is getting stronger, and it's not going to have everything masks all fading away this year. And so I was wondering if there were any additional preparations or funds that we could ask for that we needed to enhance our outdoor learning areas for children so they can have more breaks.
Well, I'll share briefly. Actually, at each of our locations, our PTCs and PFA
Right.
at high school are really in high gear getting those together and getting those plans in place and, making that work. Last year, we used the outdoors quite a bit. We used the little stools and any kind of space that made sense in each of the buildings. So as far as the grant money goes, we haven't seen that need for those resources at this point to supplement what's happening with the PTCs and the PFA. If we do start to see a need, if the plans get bigger than the budget, then there could be an opportunity to do something there.
Right, I was just thinking most of the funds that the parents were coming up with, that would all go into effect at earliest at the end of this coming school year. Is that going to help earlier than that, do you think?
Actually, it could be earlier than that.
Okay,
Some have
terrific.
been underway for a couple of years. Others have, they may be using it as an anchor for fundraising, but they've already got some of the funds in the bank ready to go. So I don't think funding will delay any of the projects.
Okay, terrific. It's just something, if there is a need and there aren't sources, I'd like to know about it as a board member.
Great. Well, and Jill mentioned the testing and that there was some money there, and that could possibly become available for a transfer down the line, because I did have a conversation today with somebody who runs the Operation Expanded Testing Program, which is federally funded. We'd have some work on our end we'd have to do, but it's nowhere near the cost that we assumed last year when we were doing the testing. So if that were to come through, there could be some more resources that are freed up in the grant that could be we can explore a different use for it. I'd love to say a planetarium, but that can't be, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit any of the 5 categories at this point, but I'm still working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Need a few grants. Great. Other questions, comments? All right, thank you, Dr. Crenti, appreciate the update. Okay, next up is a question on everyone's mind, enrollment. Ms. Bianca?
Thank you, Ms. Parkhill. Good evening, everyone. We'll be presenting a full enrollment report to you probably in early November, but we wanted to update you from our last update, which was in July. And I wanted to reassure you that we've continued to meet regularly, Dr. Lutzy and Dr. Carenti, myself, and the administration, to closely monitor the enrollment about every 2 weeks. Especially in terms of the elementary classrooms, as we are looking to meet guidelines for class size. And we've made a few adjustments just in the very recent past with our staffing, but all of it's been keeping within our allotted budgeted positions that were decided at budget season. And in terms of the numbers, they really aren't very different from the last time they were reported. But just to give you an idea of where we are currently, our elementary total is at 1508, east is at 525, south is at 522, west is at 461. And last year's October 1st numbers, which are the numbers that we will be reporting on in early November, the total elementary count was 1531. So that's a difference of 23. Our SACS numbers are currently at 1332. And last year on October 1st, they were 1342, so a difference of 10. And our New Canaan High School number is currently 1294, and last year's number on October 1st was 1349, so a difference of 55. And our total number as of today is 4134, and our total number last year on October 1st was 4222. So a difference of 98 students in total across the whole district is what we're seeing currently. I think we're all very comfortable with our staffing numbers and our class sizes, and don't expect any huge influxes. We've taken a minor look at any kinds of trends that we're seeing. And there is quite a bit of movement within town in New Canaan. And the bulk of the move-ins are from the state of New York. That's about 60% of, a little bit over 60% of the out-of-state move-ins were from New York. So, thank you. Taking the questions.
Questions? Do you think that, is there any trends in kindergarten to suggest that there's a wait, people are holding back, or because of the pandemic, or maybe not? Do we know what the preschools are? How they're doing?
Do we know that, Jill?
No, we don't have the information on the preschools at this time, but we know that there are director meetings, so we'll get in touch with the directors of the preschool and get a better understanding of what their enrollment is. We do know that the YMCA did open a pre-K-5 class, and we've heard that some of the other preschools have opened pre-K-5 classes as well, so that could play an impact with our kindergarten numbers, but it's really hard to tell at this time. And it's not unusual for us to go through that large class, small class, large class, small class, which is always problematic when you hit SACS because you have to have certification. So the certification shifts from 6th to 7th grade. And so you have to have a 712 certification when you hit teaching the content areas at SACS. So that always gets to be a little bit tricky. But other than that, it's not unusual for us to see those patterns, small, big, small, big. So.
Yeah, right, okay. Deanna?
Thank you. I just, I'm a little, if you could just kind of dive into the high school numbers a little bit more. I don't have my old enrollment form. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I just wanted to understand sort of in sort of my history in the board, that seems like a very large drop at the high school, and I didn't know what you're hearing about that drop, and you know what families are saying, or do you think it's early, or?
Keep in mind, Deanna, you're losing the largest class that ever went through New Canaan Public Schools.
That's exactly.
No, I know that.
The senior
I
class
absolutely
that
know
just
that.
graduated.
It doesn't account for 100 students, I don't think.
It's 55.
The
It's
difference at the
55.
high school level is 55.
Right, so that's 40, yeah. So, no, it's 98.
No, that's
No,
total
98
across the whole district.
Oh, sorry, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, so, are you hearing though at like, at the elementary schools, 20, are people delayed in signing up because a lot of people are moving in from out of town and they're not familiar with the process, or?
All I can say to you is, just from overhearing as I walk by the front desk where Laura Walsh sits, and in my about weekly conversations with her, she is over scrutinizing and overly responding and overly touching base yet again for the third or fourth time. So I feel really confident that we have a good handle on managing the volume of phone calls and the sometimes maybe not so quick follow through because people get busy. She calls them and calls them again. She also told me that she's been over scrutinizing people politely, of course, in terms of a withdrawal. If they've called and given her any indication that they might be removing their child or, going to private school, she calls them back if she doesn't hear back from them. So, I really feel confident that we're doing a good job of kind of keeping track and getting as much information as we can without being intrusive. She's very good at what she does.
So as you know, it's the October 1 numbers that are reported, and that's really designed to give districts a chance for all this to shake out, for people, if they're coming or going, and the paperwork to be completed and the withdrawals to be there. And at that point, Laura will take a look to see where folks are going to, where folks are coming from, and, to try to look at any trends that are informative for us as well. We all sort of, I think, certainly I did, expect a bit of a bump in our enrollment this year, so it's a little bit of a surprise to see the numbers where they are. But I will say we're quite fortunate to have budgeted the way that we did for because in the face of the unknown, we didn't know what to do with our staffing for the elementary level. And turns out we are currently sitting with exactly the same number of sections at the elementary level as we had last year, distributed a little bit differently. But in order to keep everything within class size guidelines, we're literally at that same number of homeroom sections. So that worked out well to just flat budget the staffing model year to year so that we could meet the needs of the kids. So, when you see a drop of about 25 students or so at the elementary, it'd be wonderful if they all came from the same grade in the same school and you could reduce one teaching section, but it never works that way, right? So that's 1 here and 2 there, and sort of how it gets distributed across our 3 elementaries and the 5 grades at them. So sometimes you get lucky, and I think keeping our budget stable on the number of staff and the FTE model worked out well for us this year.
And I think what's also important to point out at the elementary level, which may not be showing right now, but in the spring, we were down 3 sections. And so throughout the summer, we've added 2 additional sections over at South, and we've added another additional section over at West. It does still bring us back to being flat from a staff perspective year to year, which is exactly how we planned. But we have monitored those numbers, and we have seen an increase since the spring. It's just not a huge increase. It's just bringing us back up to being flat even in our number of sections that we've had.
Is there any sense of how these numbers and trends compare to other neighboring towns?
Not yet.
Not
I mean,
yet.
it's a little early. Until the October 1 report out, people are, we'll talk it through, and even tonight, we don't have presentation and handouts because it could change tomorrow. As we do it.
And I do know that some of the surrounding districts are actually using some of their grant money to even bring class size guidelines down even more. So that's not going to necessarily be a true comparison. So some of your larger districts, even like a Westport, are using some of their grant money to reduce class size, and they're hiring extra staff to do that.
Do you have the breakout, and you gave us the breakout for current elementary, East, South, and West, but we just got the aggregated numbers for that in last year. Do you have that in front of you?
I'm sorry, I don't think that I do. I could get it for you, though.
Thanks, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you for the update on enrollment. Moving on to an update on our school reopening. Dr. Lexi.
Sure, and thank you. I will certainly invite the cabinet members to jump in, at will as we go through this. I won't take too long because we did spend quite a bit of time last week going through the reopening plans. So as you're aware, the plans that we reviewed last week and that had been adjusted a little bit this last week given some changes because the landscape keeps changing around us between executive orders and the CDC and Department of Public Health and others with their guidelines. So we're striving to keep up with all of that. So we sent out this morning our continuity of services plan, and we did also sort of reformat it and post it to the Charting Our Course website that I continue to encourage everyone and anyone to go to learn about our efforts and to keep updated on our progress with this. I think that the couple of important pieces just to touch base on here. So one thing that's changed, you may very well be aware, in Executive Order 12D, Governor Lamont is requiring all Board of Education staff and contractors to be fully vaccinated by sometime in October. He uses September 27th, I think, is a date for the first shot, if getting a multiple shot series. We're working through what the executive order says and the guidelines that it provides for districts to implement this. We were down the road on this as a district. We had already started collecting the vaccination status of our staff so that we could look at a similar program. So this should hopefully help to accelerate the work that we've been doing. And we're beginning to talk with employee groups to talk about how we operationalize this expectation and requirement here in our schools. This includes contractors, so it does include, for instance, DADCO drivers and others that come into our school to serve, work with students, work with adults, and to do other things for us. So it's not necessarily one-off contractors, but it is a contractor who is interacting with our schools on a regular basis. The other thing in here, just to touch base on quickly, and we're still working again through some of the challenges presented therein, but that shift that we talked about last week regarding remote learning, we broke that out sort of as a full-time remote, temporary remote, and then sort of district-wide remote. And so in what we sent around today, we tried to draw some distinction between those. The full-time remote is available, as we mentioned before, on a very limited basis. And I just want to encourage students and families in those positions that think they may qualify to contact their building principal, who will then look into it for them, work with a nurse, perhaps Dr. Pierce, our district doctor, school counselors, and others to assess and, if appropriate, to put a plan together for that remote learning. Certainly there's challenges around this idea of temporary remote learning. We're saying that the requirement is that it's a COVID-related issue around isolation or quarantine that makes somebody eligible to participate in the temporary learning program. So the challenges there, certainly if school's open and there's a close contact and students have to quarantine, that's very straightforward. But there are also travel expectations that include quarantine. When unvaccinated individuals return from travel, the DPH and SDE expects folks to self-quarantine for a minimum of 7 days with a negative test on or after the third day. So that poses challenges between, certainly as we start the school year here, coming in from the summer break. We've got a 4-day break around Labor Day this year, and we've got families who travel for various reasons. So the CDC and their guidance is still strongly urging unvaccinated people not to travel. And it really says right at the top of the guidelines that is their recommendation. If travel is a necessity, then certainly we ask folks to follow the DPH guidelines and quarantine, get tested, and return. In those instances, we will provide a live stream opportunity for students to participate in their classes, as we did last year. What we're not doing is sort of the day-by-day remote learning. Last year, students didn't feel well. They were home for any reason, or even on a college visit, other things. They were contacting the school and requesting to go be on remote for that day. And that's no longer available for students or families. It's really for COVID-related absences that are due to isolation or quarantine, or those other reasons that we discussed before. So we've got town hall meetings that we're having with each of the building levels. We had one for the high school today. We've got SACs in the elementary school tomorrow. We talk a little bit about the plan and then open it up for questions and answers. And if folks are confused by this or interested in learning more, I strongly suggest they attend one of those meetings, and Dr. Krenti curates the questions for us, and we work our way through all of that. Again, the whole document itself is on Charting Our Course for anybody to take a look, and it's formatted a little bit easier, I think, for people to be able to navigate. The very last thing, and I'm again glad to go into more detail about any of this, but we are looking at testing opportunities and strategies that we're going to be implementing. There are testing opportunities this week and going forward for folks right here in New Canaan, Tuesday and Thursday. Over, I believe at the pool house over by Lapham, they're going to be doing the testing, and there's a sign up on the town website. There's also some opportunities right over at Stanford High School every day in the evening, so between 4 and 7 o'clock generally for folks who might be working or otherwise can't get there in the morning. They could go over there, and that's walk-in testing. I also I talked today with somebody who is part of the Operation Extended Testing I mentioned before, which is a larger scale surveillance testing approach where the kits would be provided for us, we would do the swabbing, and then they would be FedEx essentially take it off as a pooled testing strategy, and we're able to do anywhere from 25 to 2,500 at a time based on need, get those out in a PCR test, and we get the results within 24 to 48 hours. And that would be at no cost to the district, because that's part of the COVID relief money coming from the federal government in order to help keep schools open. So we're looking for a way to tap into that as a large-scale strategy that maybe would be used at strategic times as we did last year. So maybe it's after Thanksgiving, after Halloween, after the holiday break, those times when travel is certainly more common, as a way to help folks to get back into school, with the quarantine needs or what have you. We're also, again, partnering with the health department to be able to use the testing that they have over there, over by Lapham. So if we have individuals who need that, it's a simple sign up, it's simple to go with the health department, and that works for faculty staff as well. And then we're looking at training individually for our nurses here in the building, so that if a faculty member starts to feel ill during the school day, staff member has a problem, anything like that, they're able to administer the rapid antigen test right here on site for the adults and get the response there to help to identify quickly. I think that's very important, because we saw last year, if there is going to be spread in the building, more often than not, it would be with the teacher or the adult being the positive case initially, because they're the ones who talk the most, who move around the most. That was just the pattern that we saw. So we want to make sure we have something to help combat that, going forward. I'll pause for a minute and see if there's any questions or any other follow-up anyone would like to share.
Can I just ask, what is the percentage of our staff that are already vaccinated? I mean, I'm sure you don't know the contractors and people that come into the buildings, but isn't it like 97% or something to that effect?
We're in good shape. It's not quite that high, and it depends on which group you're looking at. So for instance, if we're talking about administrators, we're at 100%. Right? Every administrator across the district is. And when we look at faculty, we're not quite there, but at last count, we seem to be around 90% or so. Right now, we're still collecting the results of the survey that we sent out from folks, and we are going to be expecting everyone to respond in the next week. And if they don't respond, we have to assume they're negative or that they're not vaccinated, and that we have to enroll them into the testing program that we're putting in place for weekly testing, as required under Executive Order 13D. And when we're asking a question, we're actually asking folks to tell us the date of the shots and to upload their card. So that there's a verification process there. But that also helps us if and when the booster shots are recommended and available. We'll be able to set up that clinic for everybody. We know the date that they need them, and we'll be able to plan accordingly to make sure that happens.
So if we have a teacher that doesn't want to get vaccinated, they just have to get tested once a week, or how is that?
Sure. So they're still interpreting the Executive Order 13D. My understanding of it is that there are exemptions. There's a medical exemption or a strongly held religious belief exemption. Beyond that, the expectation is everybody would be vaccinated.
Okay. All right.
Deanna?
Can you talk about free testing options? Because I know the town testing isn't free. And I know for a long time the state was providing free testing in Norwalk and in Stanford, but I don't know the status of that anymore. And if sort of we have a population in our district, the under 12 that don't even have an opportunity to be vaccinated, sort of what is available for them? Because it gets, I mean, it's not an inexpensive process to get tested if you are not through the free program that the state provides.
So I believe, and I can double check this if I'm mistaken, I'll certainly let you know, but I do believe that the testing in Stamford that is organized by the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and they've got, I believe it's a free walk-in testing clinic. So it's at Stamford High School Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is from 4 to 7 p.m. in the lower lot of Stamford High School.
If that's not already on our website, I would urge us to make that available to parents so everyone understands where they could have free testing and lay out the costs, because, I think people need to understand if they do the town testing, it is not going to be a free option for them.
Sure, it's in the plan that was sent around today, but we can certainly break it out and highlight it so it's much easier for people to find. I know not everyone likes to read everything that I write.
I like those bullets at the bottom, right?
I know. So beyond that, Education Week comes every Friday generally. Today's came this afternoon. I just looked at it before we came over, and the lead story is school reopening just got more complicated. And I only want to share that because I think we could have said that every day for the last 2.5 years or so, as we have continued to figure things out and work our way through it. But we're incredibly lucky. We've got a great team doing this work and really putting whatever it takes into getting things ready, getting our buildings ready, and preparing for our students. So we will be opening our doors to every student on Monday, August 30th, and we look forward to having them all back. So.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that update. Yep. And I think, just on that note, there's been some in-person meet the teacher and some other things that have been going on already this week, right? So it's
There have been,
already
yeah.
improvement over last year, so.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. What we've done is look to see what can we bring outside. How can we still do this work, give these opportunities to our families, do it outside, do it so it's a little different, but it still builds those connections and gets things started. We also, our principals took a good look around who are those parents who haven't been in the building yet. Our new kindergarten parents, or maybe this year's 6th grade parents whose students were in 5th grade last year, or, over here at the high school. So how can we open our doors to them? So at least they get a chance to walk through the building, get a sense of where their kids are and see what's happening. And so I know our principals are really working hard to find ways to do that. And it's, different times, smaller groups, start outside, move them through, things like that. So really being creative in making sure that those connections with the community stay, because we know how important that is for our parents to feel, that they know where their kids are spending their time and what they're doing. So. Yep.
I just want to add something really quick. On that note that you just reminded me, being a volunteer in your kids' schools is just the best. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people that are bummed. So just keeping people abreast on I'm sure you don't have any foresight, but just keeping people updated, because we always want our parents in our schools, of course, but
Right.
yes.
What we're hearing from the DPH right now is that we're in the exponential phase of the 4th wave, and that they anticipate a peak sometime end of September or early October, and hopefully comes down quickly after that, which seems to be the pattern of the Delta variant in other parts of the world. So we're watching it very closely. That's why we say we want to get our schools open, keep them safe, get our routines going, and if we can see that happening as a pattern, we'll do what we've done all along, which is grab those windows of opportunity. When we get a chance if we have a chance to bring in volunteers, even for a short period of time, we'll go ahead and do that, if it's safe to do that. And then if things change, we have to pivot again. And, we don't hesitate to make decisions based on what we think the conditions might be like weeks out in the future. We make decisions based on where we are today, knowing that we can pivot if and when we need to, but to take advantage of those opportunities when we can. Yeah, thanks.
Sherry.
So I just feel compelled to say thank you, because over the past year and a half, you and your administration have, you've earned the credibility. You've proven that you can lead through the uncertainty of the pandemic. And, what we thought was going to be a smooth opening yet again is not, with the uptick in Delta, with the new executive orders. But as a parent and as a board member, I'm thrilled to say that I'm, 100% confident to send my kids to school on Monday, and that they'll be in a safe, and that you're going to do what you have to do to mitigate this Delta and keep us in school. So thank you, because it's not happening and a lot of other places, so thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Penny?
So I just wanted to echo what Sherry said, and also, since Vivian and Ronan are here, to thank the teachers again for your unbelievable support and commitment to our students. It's really been a part of what has kept the kids in school. And so thank you again for looking prospectively for another year of that partnership.
Yeah, Vivian, I didn't see you there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. That concludes our reports and recognition, and now we'll move back to comments from the public, if anyone would like to make any comments to the board. Okay. I don't see any, so we'll move on to announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzy, back to you.
Well, the only future business that really matters is a week from today.
Yeah, true.
Our first day of school and getting things started. But we do have another meeting scheduled for September 8th. And at that point, we'll be sharing with the board a platform. We've talked about Schoology, Google Classroom. We've talked about Seesaw for our youngest kids for learning management systems. Well, we figured it was time for us to use a similar system for our work here as a board, and to have something that's really designed to streamline and facilitate the communications and the minutes, the videos, the policies, the agendas, all of those. And that's board docs. Some may recall a presentation that we had a couple of years ago was all put on hold, but we've moved forward with that at this point. So we'll be talking more about that and sharing that with the board there. We have our second reading of the district goals for 21-22, second reading of our remote participation policy. And Dr. Keating will be here to share with us our end of the year fiscal report. As you know, September 1, we have to close our books and go through. This is an unaudited presentation as always, but it'll have all the closeout transfers, anything that we need in order to close out the year 21 and continue forward in our fiscal year 22.
Great. And I would just add to encourage board members, whether you were here at the last meeting or not, just to have a chance to review the goals and send any comments or questions that you have. It'll just help the next meeting move along.
Yeah, we've
more
made
efficiently.
those few changes that we discussed at our meeting last week, so I'll send those around first thing in the morning so that you have the most updated. What you'll see is the clean copy with the changes from the meeting that are highlighted in yellow. Should make it easy to review.
Okay, thank you. With that, take a motion to adjourn. Penny, second. Jen, all in favor? Okay, thanks, everyone. Good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you
Good
for
evening.
coming.